Hello everyone and welcome to this video where today I'm going to be filming my 8-week pregnancy update. Little disclaimer as always, as this is an 8-week update, I will be posting this once I am post 12 weeks and you may see me looking down as I've got my notebook in front of me here. So in this video I have my follow-up appointment with the doctors around my sickness, and I also did have my 8-week midwife booking appointment this week, so I'll discuss that and everything they went through with me further on in the video. So starting off, as I mentioned at the end of last week's video, I had a follow-up appointment with my doctors about my sickness, as they've trialled me on a couple of different anti-sickness tablets now and they've not been working. So they phoned me up to ask how I was getting on with, excuse the pronunciation, xylazine. But I mentioned that obviously I was still being sick, but I did feel less tired than I did before. So she mentioned about now trying 2 anti-sickness together. She had mentioned previously when I had been that this is an option for some people and often one anti-sickness does not work on its own. So she said about trialing the last one that I was on with a non-antihistamine, as both of the tablets that they put me on before were antihistamines. She seemed to think that antihistamines weren't particularly working for me, so she was going to trial that. However, the one that she had suggested for me, I would only be able to take for 5 days, so I declined taking that because I didn't feel that it was particularly worth it to then have to try another medication again. I would have rather just been put on something completely different that I could carry on taking. If it worked, then great, and if it doesn't, then try something else. But I think if I found something that worked for 5 days and then didn't work any longer, it would be really frustrating. So we decided against that, and she said she would speak to some doctors and get back to me about what other options there were of combining different medications. So the doctor did actually send me over a prescription for a different anti-sickness to take with the one that she gave me last. However, I actually decided by that point not to go and collect it and just trial not taking any anti-sickness tablets just for the rest of the week and to see how I got on. I feel like where I personally really struggle to take tablets anyway, that they were making me gag and just not helping with feeling sick, so I wanted to see how I got on. And kind of by the end of the week I was feeling that the sickness was starting to subside slightly, so just thought I'd carry on with that and see how I get on. It was more manageable because at its worst I was being sick up to 5 times a day, and this was less frequent, so I felt that compared to that I was able to manage it more than I was before. I did have one day in the week where the sickness was particularly bad. However, I feel that was down to the food that I had eaten. I'd eaten food that contained onion, and I am starting to notice trends of things that I can and can't eat. And it seems to be any time that I have anything containing onion that it tends to make me quite sick. So I've decided I'm going to stay away from it for now and then maybe trial it again in a few weeks' time and see how I get on with it. I've also found that roast dinners do not agree with me either. They tend to make me really sick. So I'm trying to figure out what it is on a roast dinner that I can and can't eat, as obviously you have such a variety of foods. I think it may be either down to cauliflower cheese or red meat, which obviously red meat is really recommended. However, I'm going to try roast without those 2 things and see how I get on after that. I've still been having really major food aversions. I've been really struggling with eating or drinking anything, particularly lunchtime. Finding something I want to eat at lunchtime is a really big struggle. I think because I'm at work and everyone's eating different food, it's the mixture of other people's smells is making me feel really sick, and then because I feel sick I just don't want to eat. before I could have like a ham and salad wrap and a banana and things like that, but I just cannot eat those at the moment at all. So I am basically having an apple, grapes and plain crackers. Plain crackers have really got me through. Luckily I found a breakfast that I'm able to tolerate really well. Just having plain butter and toast really gets me through the morning. That's one thing that just does not set my sickness off. So yeah, unfortunately it's been really plain foods again this week. But yeah, I'm starting to understand now what I can eat, what doesn't make me sick, which is really helping me manage my sickness. I've still had like just a general unwell feeling as well. I find it really hard to describe as I just can't quite put my finger on it. But I particularly get this again before lunch times, so I'm thinking it must just be down to needing food and just feeling hungry without actually the feeling of being hungry. But yeah, it just makes me feel so terrible. But once I've eaten, I do tend to feel much better. So again, it's nice knowing that I can easily solve that issue. I just have to wait till lunchtime till I can have a main meal, and that really helps me. One really positive thing about this week is the funny taste in my mouth has actually started to go. So as mentioned, the last few weeks I've really been struggling with the taste that I've been getting in my mouth. But yeah, I haven't had to really have chewing gum, so that's really positive and hopefully a step in the right direction and away from the sickness. So later in the week I also had my 8-week midwife booking appointment. So this was one of the first contacts I had with the midwife. It was a phone call that they had booked in for me, and I was told it would last around 45 minutes, where they would just ask basically a lot of questions about your medical history, your family's medical history, just things like that to get a good idea of how they're going to need to take care of you through the pregnancy. So the first thing that they discussed was all of my past medical history. They then went on to ask questions about my partner's past medical history and also about both of our families as well. That's kind of like any conditions that there is in the family, and things like that, just to see whether you'd need any extra testing through the pregnancy or anything would need monitoring. As I have already had my daughter, they also asked me about my past birthing history, kind of how long the labour was, did I have any interventions, things like that. But with my daughter I actually had a really fast labour and I was quite progressed by the time I got to the hospital. So she was actually saying for me they're going to make sure that they get me in a bit sooner this time, which was good to hear, because when I was phoning up last time they tend to try and keep you at home as long as possible, and I was thinking that I was getting very close and I was, so that's good to know that they're going to monitor that a bit more this time. They also just checked things like making sure that I was taking folic acid. They also told me about this being recommended until 13 weeks, which I already knew. They also said about making sure that I was taking vitamin D, and they gave me the details regarding booking in my 12-week scan, which I ended up having a phone call to get that booked in. The midwife explained to me what would actually happen at the 12-week scan. She said some of the things they check for, such as like the fluid behind the back of the neck. She also mentioned about having a blood test done, which would also check for any other conditions that may come up. I also had my 16-week midwife appointment booked in as well. She just said that if my dates aren't what I think that they are at my 12-week scan, then I would just need to move that appointment slightly. But yeah, that was already done and booked in. She also booked in some blood tests for me to have done this week as well. She did explain at this appointment I would just have like a few different checks to done just to see how I was getting on, and this was in a couple of days time after my 8-week booking phone call. So a couple of days later I went along to that appointment. It was where all my midwife care is going to be held at. So obviously you have the scans and specialist appointments at the hospital, and then any other midwife appointments are done at this particular place that I went to. It wasn't a midwife that I saw at this appointment, however she was kind of based in the area where the midwives would be. So at this appointment she did a blood test, and that was to check my iron levels, my blood group as well, and I would receive those results back probably next week, as it was late in the week by the time I had that appointment. Also, whilst I was there, she did get me to do a CO2 test. So it's basically just a tube that you blow into to check your CO2 levels. That's just instant result, so that came back all good for me. She did also check my blood pressure whilst I was there, which was all fine too. And she did just get me to do a urine sample to check for any ketones or anything else that might come up in that. But yeah, that was all good also. She gave me a little pot as well, as she said I'll often need to bring urine samples to my midwife appointments. So she said I would next need to bring one with me for my 16-week appointment. So I had one ready to go, so I didn't need to do that whilst I was there basically. So I'll now go on to show you my 8-week pregnancy bump update. So this is me at 8 weeks and 6 days pregnant. I think my bloat is definitely starting to harden out now, as it becomes a bit more of like a solid bump. Excuse my nails as they've all come off. But yeah, this is 8 weeks and 6 days. So that is everything for my 8-week pregnancy update. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next week. Goodbye.